Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Hello, CJ.
Hello, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
Wala pong reaksyon ng presidente dahil sa mulat-mula niya.
President Duterte remains unfazed by the latest move of the International Criminal Court to conduct a formal investigation into his crackdown on illegal drugs, according to Malacanang.
The United States announced a new alliance with Australia and Britain to strengthen military capabilities in the face of a rising China, with Canberra to get a nuclear submarine fleet and American cruise missiles.
A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket carrying 4 space tourists blasted off Wednesday night from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida for the first mission to orbit the globe with an all-civilian crew.
And a new climate change report shows that limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius will be impossible without immediate large-scale emissions cuts, according to the UN chief.
First, here in the country, President Duterte remains unfazed by the latest move of the International Criminal Court to conduct a formal investigation into his crackdown on illegal drugs, according to Malacanang. In an online press briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the president would not cooperate with the ICC when it starts its probe into the crime against humanity allegedly committed during his relentless campaign against illegal drugs. Let's listen in.
Wala pong reaksyon ng presidente dahil sa mulat-mula niya, sinasabi niya na siya ay mamamatay muna bago siya haharap sa mga dayuhang mga West. No? Kung merong reklamo, dapat dito sa isampa sa Pilipinas dahil ang ating mga hukuman ay gumagana. No? At ang korte ng ICC ay walang jurisdiksyon. Pwede lang siyang mag-akto sa mga kaso kung ang mga hukuman natin ay hindi gumagana o di naman kaya ay yung tinatawag na unwilling na magkaroon ng jurisdiksyon sa mga kaso na pinapatawan ng parusa, hindi lang po ng wrong statute, kung hindi po ng ating batas sa Pilipinas na tinatawag na IHL. So sa kanya, bahala sila kung anong gusto nilang gawin. Dahil nagkaroon na nga po ng desisyon ang pre-trial chamber mismo ng ICC na nagsasabi na wag na dapat itutuloy ang mga investigasyon na wala namang possibility na magkakaroon ng successful na prosecution. Dahil yan po ay pagsayang lamang ng oras at ng resources ng ICC mismo. Ang paninindigan ng Presidente, lahat ng gusto magreklamo, bukas po ang ating mga hukuman sa Pilipinas. At nung tayo po ay naging partido sa Tratado ng Roma, hindi po natin sinurrender ang ating soberenya at ang ating jurisdiksyon. Ang sabi lang natin po, pwede lang gumalaw ang korte kung wala po tayong hukuman na magbibigay ng katarungan. At meron naman po tayong mga hukuman dito ngayon.
The ICC's pre-trial chamber on Wednesday gave its green light to the request of its former chief prosecutor, Fatu Bensouda, to conduct a full-blown investigation into Duterte's drug war. President Duterte, Roque said, would just let the ICC proceed with its plan to investigate his anti-narcotics campaign.
The United States announced a new alliance with Australia and Britain to strengthen military capabilities in the face of a rising China, with Canberra to get a nuclear submarine fleet and American cruise missiles. Take a look.
The United Kingdom, Australia, and the United States are creating a new trilateral defense partnership known as AUKUS, with the aim of working hand in glove to preserve security and stability in the Indo-Pacific. We're opening a new chapter in our friendship, and the first task of this partnership will be to help Australia acquire a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines.
We intend to build these submarines in Adelaide, Australia, in close cooperation with the United Kingdom and the United States. But let me be clear. Australia is not seeking to acquire nuclear weapons or establish a civil nuclear capability. Our world is becoming more complex, especially here in our region, the Indo-Pacific. This affects us all. The future of the Indo-Pacific will impact all our futures.
Today, we're taking another historic step to deepen and formalize cooperation among all three of our nations, because we all recognize the imperative of ensuring peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific over the long term. We need to be able to address both the current strategic environment in the region and how it may evolve, because the future of each of our nations, and indeed the world, depends on a free and open Indo-Pacific enduring and flourishing in the decades ahead.
President Joe Biden, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and his British counterpart Boris Johnson did not mention China in unveiling their alliance, dubbed AUKUS. But their intent was clear, and their announcement prompted fury in Beijing. The first major initiative announced under the new alliance was the fleet of 8 state-of-the-art nuclear-powered submarines for Australia. Now, the submarines, said Biden and the other leaders, will not be nuclear-armed, only powered with nuclear reactors. A U.S. official said with China building up its own navy and repeatedly testing decades of U.S. military dominance across Asia, the creation of AUKUS, with its focus on submarines, is meant to send a message of reassurance and a determination to maintain a strong deterrent stance.
Meanwhile, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison on Thursday offered an open invitation to Chinese President Xi Jinping for talks. China, however, swiftly condemned the agreement, with Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian saying it seriously undermines regional peace and stability and intensifies the arms race. Take a look.
With China, as it has with many countries in the region, including our Quad partners in Japan and India. I spoke to Narendra Modi and Yoshisuga last night. Of course, I said I spoke to Prime Minister Ardern. I'll be having further calls today as we talk through these issues of that engagement with China. And there is an open invitation for President Xi and I to discuss these and many other matters, and that has always been there. Australia remains open to discuss these and all issues that are important to the Indo-Pacific. I believe and I hope we would both share the same objective of a peaceful Indo-Pacific.
美英向澳大利亚出口高度敏感的核潜艇技术，再次证明他们将核出口作为地缘政治博弈的工具，采取双重标准，这是极其不负责任的行径。
China has in recent years hit Australia with trade sanctions and snubbed diplomatic talks as part of what critics say is a campaign of coercion.
In a related news, the new alliance also torpedoed Australia's conventional submarine deal with France, which had been personally backed by President Emmanuel Macron. Morrison confirmed on Thursday morning Australia would not proceed with the deal. Biden, in an attempt to placate Paris, said France was a key partner and ally in the Asia-Pacific region. France's foreign minister was nonetheless enraged, branding the agreement a stab in the back. Jean-Yves Le Drian said, "I'm very angry today and bitter. This is not something allies do to each other," unquote. Now, the submarine contract with France was worth around 50 billion Australian dollars at the time of signing. More recently, the overall deal was estimated at 90 billion Australian dollars, taking into account currency fluctuations and cost overruns.
Meanwhile, New Zealand will not lift a decades-long ban on nuclear-powered vessels entering its waters in the wake of key ally Australia's decision to develop a nuclear submarine fleet, according to Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. And Ardern said her Australian counterpart Scott Morrison had briefed her on Canberra's plan to develop nuclear-powered submarines with the help of the United States and Britain. Take a look.
Doesn't change. This is not a treaty level arrangement. It does not change our existing relationships including Five Eyes, or our close partnership with Australia on defence matters. I was advised of this proposal on the same day as Australia's Cabinet. We stay in close touch on matters of importance to both of us, but as you can imagine, Prime Minister Morrison was also very well aware that New Zealand was unlikely to be interested in building nuclear-powered submarines. That again, the centrepiece, the anchor of this arrangement are nuclear-powered submarines, and it will be very clear to all New Zealanders and to Australia why New Zealand would not wish to be a part of that project.
Meanwhile, experts reacted to Australia's decision to build nuclear-powered submarines for the first time, a major strategic shift as the country weighs strengthening defenses against a rising China. International Security Program Director at the Lowy Institute, Sam Roggevin, told AFP that the announcement came as a bit of a shock to most observers and marked a significant escalation in military involvement in the region.
I do. I think this is a significant escalation on the part of these of Australia and the United Kingdom and the US, because it introduces a significant new military capability into the region, or at least it will eventually. So it's unlikely to be viewed as anything but a move against China in Beijing, and I think they'll. I'm not surprised. I won't be surprised if they don't take it well. We're basically throwing in our lot with the United States and its strategy against China, because it is much harder in the light of an agreement like this for Australia to take a more independent stance against China, or with relation to China, rather than to basically throw our lot in with the United States. That gets harder now because of this deal. There are only 6 countries in the world that operate nuclear-powered submarines, and all 6 of those countries also have massive civilian nuclear infrastructure and all have nuclear weapons. So, this is a major global step. And I think the implications for the region are actually that it lowers the barriers a little bit for other countries to consider doing something similar. So, there was a period of time when Australian leaders would say that our security was to be found in Asia, not from Asia. But this agreement doesn't look like that. It looks like a throwback to something earlier.
Absolutely surprising. I wouldn't say shocking. It's a very welcome development, and I think comes on the back of long-standing Australian requests for greater access to US technical know-how and for greater bilateral two-way defence industrial cooperation. It now appears willing to empower its close allies and partners through technical assistance in ways that previously many Australian strategists could only have dreamed of. No one really thought it was likely that we were going to get nuclear propulsion technology from the United States in any short-term horizon. The total of all of this is really for countries that share and value a stable Indo-Pacific that is rule-governed and backed by a robust military balance of power to come together and to deal with the consequences of China's rise and America's relative military decline. It will then try to convince Southeast Asian countries and others across the Indo-Pacific that they ought to distance themselves from the trilateral partners, because they will only get regional countries into conflict and trouble down the line. These are familiar Chinese talking points. They are what China goes to after any expansion of military or strategic initiatives by Australia in recent years. The problem with those talking points is they are ringing hollow increasingly across Southeast Asia and across the Indo-Pacific as
The UN Security Council gathered behind closed doors for an emergency meeting about North Korea's latest ballistic missile test, which member states consider a major threat. The French ambassador said that. Now, in the past, such meetings, this one called by Estonia and France, have often resulted in a joint statement by European members of the Security Council. But France's ambassador to the UN, Nicolas de Rivière, said there was consensus among the group. He said, "We all condemned what happened, the tests." In a statement from London, the British Foreign Office, meanwhile, condemned the test as a clear violation of Security Council resolutions and a threat to regional peace and security, as the United States has also done. Earlier Wednesday, South Korea fired a submarine ballistic missile, and North Korea again fired 2 ballistic missiles into the sea in what seems to have become an arms race between 2 countries still technically at war. South Korea is not subject to bans on launching ballistic missile tests, according to a UN diplomatic source.
Meanwhile, an analyst said the North and South Korea's missile test, only hours apart from each other, should raise alarm to the arms race on the peninsula. South Korea successfully test-fired a submarine-launched ballistic missile hours after nuclear-armed North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles into the sea, according to the South's military, and as China's foreign minister visited Seoul. John Dillery, a Chinese studies professor at Yonsei University, said the North's choice of timing reflects the limits on Chinese influence on the nuclear-armed country. Take a look.
It's extraordinary timing that you have not one, but 2 Koreas testing ballistic missiles on the same day. It does speak to the fact that there's an arms race in this region that everyone needs to pay attention to. But this is also a challenge to China. You know, this is not in Beijing's interest, even in terms of face, to have North Korea testing missiles while the Chinese foreign minister is here. So timing, it speaks to North Korea's independence from China, that there are limits on Chinese influence, and that the North Koreans are not acting, you know, in accordance with Beijing's wishes. And in a way, I think they've been unusually quiet, first because of the diplomacy of 2018, and then probably because of COVID. So we may be seeing the beginning of the end of that quiet period as North Korea returns to a very robust regime of developing systems, and that includes testing them. But it's not uncommon for that sort of aggression to come along also with negotiation. In a very strange way, this could be the beginning of a window of opportunity opening for some talks between U.S. officials and DPRK counterparts.
Meanwhile, Alfred Asenes of our EBC Hawaii Pacific has some updates for us, including an ongoing search for a 6-year-old girl, plus a large-scale drive-through COVID-19 testing in Honolulu.
Aloha, I'm Alfred Asenes, and this is the latest from Hawaii and the Pacific. For the 3rd day in a row, Honolulu police and family members continue their search for 6-year-old Isabella Kalua, who went missing on September 12. The FBI has now stepped in to provide assistance. She was last seen asleep in her room at her home in Waimanalo at approximately 9 p.m. on Sunday. She is mixed Caucasian with brown hair and brown eyes and was wearing a black hoodie with leggings and colorful socks. The public is being asked to contact Honolulu Crime Stoppers for any information on the missing child. Throughout this week, the city and county of Honolulu is hosting a massive COVID-19 drive-through testing at the Blaisdell Arena near downtown in response to the recent surge of new cases and increased demand for more testing on Oahu. Patients are required to register online and will be able to book appointments, which are available every 5 minutes. They will receive a QR code, which they should bring with them to their appointment, along with a valid ID. Pre-registration is required as walk-ins will not be permitted. Meanwhile, Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi continues to assure everyone on Oahu Island that there are no plans to deny anyone access to grocery stores. He explained that these recent posts on social media are false and that official announcements will always come from official channels.
Aloha, welcome to Hawaii. To travel Pono means to explore the Hawaiian Islands with care. We ask your kokua or help in protecting our natural resources, cultures, and communities.
Starting next week, Hawaiian Airlines passengers traveling to the islands will get to watch an educational video produced by crew members who will share their expert advice on ocean and hiking safety, conservation of endangered species and the environment, and cultural and community best practices. Known as the Travel Pono video, this in-flight program is in response to numerous complaints by local residents on the effects of what they call over-tourism this past summer. The airline believes the program will provide thousands of guests with tips on how to experience Hawaii safely and respectfully without disturbing the natural environment, especially marine wildlife. Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Alfred. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Malalayong lugar ang kanilang narating para maghanap buhay. Tulungan ang pamilyang iniwan sa sariling bayan. Yan ang ating mga overseas Filipino worker. Pero dahil sa di pangkaraniwang pangyayaring hatid ay krisis, may ilan sa kanilang nagpasyang umuwi. Pinagyaman ang sariling lupain, nagtayo ng negosyo na kasama sa puhunan ang sipag at tiyaga. Ang mga OFW, maraming sakripisyo, ninanais maging kapaki-pakinabang maging sa kanilang pagbabalik bansa. Sapagkat ang ating mga bagong bayani, Pilipino pa rin sa puso at damdamin.
Welcome back to the news. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said he could not abandon President Rodrigo Duterte despite sectors opposing his nomination in the International Law Commission, or ILC. The Free Legal Assistance Group, or FLAG, and the University of the Philippines Diliman Executive Committee have both opposed Roque's nomination, citing his poor track record of promoting, defending, and fulfilling human rights and the rule of law. Take a look.
Sa ibang mga bagay, nire-respeto po natin yung iba't ibang opinion tungkol sa aking nominasyon sa International Law Commission. Pero hindi naman po siguro justified ang pagtututol sa aking nominasyon dahil sa pagkakaiba ng paniniwala sa politika at hindi sa aking credentials. Unang-una po, ang International Law Commission ay hindi po International Criminal Court. Hindi po yan human rights body. Yan po ay isang body ng mga eksperto sa international law para po mag-codify ng customary international law at para po magkaroon ng progressive development of international law. Hindi po totoo na masama pong record natin bilang isang human rights defender, no? Dahil mahigit 30 taon po tayo nanindigan para sa karapatang pantao. Natigil po yan, siyempre po, nung tayo po ay napunta ng gobyerno dahil bawal naman mag-practice po ng batas, no? Na siyang ginamit natin, ng pinakulong natin ang mga ampatuan na pumatay sa mga biktima ng mga ampatuan massacre, yung ginamit din po natin, no, para ma-convict itong si Pemberton na pumatay kay Laude, no? At siyempre po, yung ating pagtatayong bilang tagalitis doon sa mga biktima ng torture, no? Kasama na po si Darius Evangelista. Nandyan na rin po yung mga kasong nakuha natin, yung view sa Human Rights Committee that criminal libel is contrary to freedom of expression. Sino ba naman ho sa aking mga kritiko ang nakagawa ng ganito? Siguro po, linawin natin, ang pagtututol nila ay dahil ayaw nila yung desisyon ko maging tagapagsalita ng presidente. Pero nasa akin na po yun. Dahil na hindi ko naman po pwedeng talikuran ng isang presidente na siyang nag-certify as urgent ng aking mga panukalang batas gaya po ng batas na ngayon na universal healthcare, yung libreng patubig, yung libreng wifi, at yung national AIDS law na nagpapataw ng parusa sa mga taong magdi-discriminate laban sa mga HIV positive na individual.
Roque is currently in New York City for the selection of members of the ILC. He is among the 11 candidates from the Asia-Pacific region. Only 8 seats are allotted for the Asia-Pacific states bracket in the UN body. If he wins a seat in ILC, Roque said he would advocate for COVID-19 vaccine equity and retention of sovereignty on islands that sank due to climate change, to prevent tension between nations.
In other news, President Vladimir Putin says that dozens of people in his entourage tested positive for the coronavirus before he went into self-isolation earlier this week. The Russian leader, who announced in March he had been vaccinated, started self-isolating on Tuesday after being identified as a coronavirus contact. Take a look.
Вы знаете, что, к сожалению, вынужден был в последний момент отменить свой визит в Душанбе. Мне очень жаль, но это связано с тем, что в ближайшем окружении, как вы знаете, выявлены случаи заболевания коронавирусом. Это не один, не два, несколько десятков человек. И теперь приходится в течение нескольких дней соблюдать режим самоизоляции.
The 68-year-old Russian leader specified in late June that he had been vaccinated with Russia's homegrown Sputnik V after months of secrecy around the issue, but the Kremlin did not show images of the inoculation. President Putin in recent months has resumed his work trips and face-to-face meetings, but many of his contacts are still required to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. Russia is among the countries hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic, with the 5th highest number of recorded cases according to an AFP tally, and has struggled to rein in infections despite easy access to vaccines.
Thousands of health workers across France have been suspended without pay for failing to get vaccinated against COVID-19 ahead of a deadline this week. That according to Health Minister Olivier Véran. France's National Public Health Agency estimated last week that roughly 12% of hospital staff and around 6% of doctors in private practices have yet to be vaccinated. Based on figures provided by individual hospitals, the actual number of suspended employees could be higher. The Paris hospital system said that 340 workers had been suspended. President Emmanuel Macron gave staff at hospitals, retirement home workers, and the fire service an ultimatum in July to get at least one shot by September 15 or face unpaid suspension. Many healthcare workers are still avoiding jabs, citing safety or efficacy concerns, raising the specter of disruptions to services in facilities forced to suspend staff without pay. France has also made a COVID health pass mandatory in cafes, restaurants, and many other public places, prompting weekly protests by tens of thousands of people who claim they are being discriminated against.
Israel's program of booster jabs has proved effective in severe cases of COVID, even as new infections never or hover near record highs, according to experts, citing recent data. Let's listen in.
And we saw around June that 2 doses were not enough to stop the Delta variant. What we do see today, based on the numbers we have, is that thanks to that booster shot, you do see lower mortality for the people that are vaccinated, meaning that the chances of dying if you didn't get your booster shot are 20 times more than if you are unvaccinated. There are still some unknowns. For example, will we need a 4th dose? Will we get, for example, an updated vaccine? What we know for the booster shot right now is that it has some effect. I think that it is in line with what we know from other vaccines, that sometimes you need to give a booster shot to get a better protection. We don't know yet what is the optimal interval between your 2nd dose and 3rd dose. We believe it is 5 to 6 months. We know that there are people that are not abiding by the rules, and that even if they need to be in isolation, they go out, etc. And right now we don't have, I would say, a technological mean to enforce that, but that is going to change, I believe, in the next few weeks. So I think that we need to do better when it comes to enforcement. I think that we have some measures that help us maintaining, a kind of normal life, and we are trying to find the right balance to live with COVID-19.
Since taking office in June, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has insisted he will aim to avoid any new lockdown, a pledge his government has kept even as the country, or roughly 9.3 million people, regularly records more than 10,000 new COVID cases a day. Schools opened on September 1 and synagogues are set to welcome worshippers with some restrictions for Yom Kippur, the Jewish calendar's most important day, when services begin on Wednesday evening. The backbone of Bennett's strategy has been the rollout of a 3rd shot of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine to everyone aged 12 and over, ignoring criticism that the booster jab is unnecessary and unfair. But the 49-year-old premier this week insisted his approach was working.
Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away. Welcome back to the news. A new climate change report out today shows that limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius will be impossible without immediate large-scale emissions cut, according to UN chief. The United in Science 2021 report, published by a range of UN agencies and scientific partners just weeks before the COP26 climate summit, said climate change and its impacts were accelerating, and a temporary reduction in carbon emissions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic had done nothing to slow the relentless warming, according to that report. The 2015 Paris Agreement on Climate Change, struck at the COP21 summit, called for capping global warming at well below 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level, and ideally closer to 1.5 degrees Celsius. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the report's findings were an alarming appraisal of just how far off course we are in meeting the Paris goals. COP26, the UN Climate Change Conference, will be held in Glasgow from October 31st to November 12th.
Doing financial transactions amid the pandemic-related movement restrictions boosts opportunities for the central bank to hit its 70% target in the number of adult Filipinos with bank accounts by 2023. In a virtual press briefing on Thursday, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Benjamin Diokno said registration for the National Identification or ID or the Philippine Identification System, which requires registrants to have bank accounts, as well as the whole of government approach in addressing issues on financial inclusion are pluses to the achievement of this goal. Based on the BSP's Financial Inclusion Survey in 2019, only around 29% of Filipino adults had bank accounts. Diokno attributed the big jump in the number of account ownership last year to the digitalization of financial transactions.
In other news, Canberra asked the World Trade Organization to rule against China's imposition of crippling tariffs on Australian wine exports on Thursday after initial consultations failed to resolve the dispute. Australia had said in June that it would challenge Beijing's tariffs at the WTO, a barrier that virtually shut down what had been Australia's biggest overseas wine market. Now, it also emerged a mandatory period of consultations had failed to resolve the dispute, prompting the latest Australian move that is sure to further sour relations between the two countries. Australia is also challenging Chinese tariffs on barley at the WTO and has objected to sanctions on a string of other goods, which Canberra describes as economic coercion. China has imposed tough economic sanctions on Australian products across a range of sectors. The measures are widely seen in Australia as punishment for pushing back against Beijing's operations to impose influence in Australia, rejecting Chinese investment in sensitive areas and publicly calling for an investigation into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic. China said it has also filed a lawsuit at the WTO challenging Australia's tariffs on a range of goods, including train wheels, wind turbines, and stainless steel sinks.
Meanwhile, British retailer Marks & Spencer's today said it planned to shut more than half its stores in France, with Brexit affecting supplies of fresh and chilled products. Announcing the closure of 11 out of 20 franchise stores, the food to clothing retailer said in a statement that the lengthy and complex export processes following the UK's exit from the European Union are significantly constraining supplies, while it will shut all 11 franchise stores with partner SFH in France over the coming months. The 9 franchise stores with partner Lagarde Travel Retail will remain open across airports and train stations, that according to Marks & Spencer. It also comes as British businesses across various sectors are struggling with deliveries as the pandemic and Brexit result in a shortage of lorry drivers.
Employees of Russian online retailer Wildberries have launched a work-to-rule strike, denouncing a drop in wages at the company run by the country's richest woman, Tatiana Bakalchuk. In a petition published on Wednesday, employees announced the start of work-to-rule action in the group's network across several regions, meaning they will do no more than the minimum required by their contract until their demands are met. By Thursday afternoon, the petition was close to reaching its target of 2,500 signatures. The petition said that the introduction of a new payment system over the summer resulted in workers losing up to 40,000 rubles off their monthly wage. Now, the Wildberries online marketplace is an industry leader in Russia and has enjoyed success across countries of the former USSR.
The news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Walang hanggan, sabi niya sa'kin. O bakit kay dali niyang limutin?
Hello, this is Mike Maniago. At may tuto pa rin tayong isang letters sender request ngayong linggo, September 19, sa Letters and Music, 1 to 2 p.m. dito lang sa Net25. See you!
Welcome back. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket carrying 4 space tourists blasted off Wednesday night from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida for the first mission to orbit the globe with an all-civilian crew. Take a look. A huge fireball illuminated the sky as the rocket's 9 engines began to pull away from Earth at 8:02 p.m. or around 12 minutes later, the Dragon capsule separated from the rocket's second stage as the crew entered orbit, while the reusable first stage made its way back to Earth for a vertical landing on a sea barge. The spaceship's trajectory will take it to an altitude of 357 miles, which is deeper into space than the International Space Station. After spending 3 days spinning around planet Earth, the 4-person crew, all Americans, will splash down off the Florida coast. The mission aims to raise $200 million for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, a leading facility in Tennessee. The crew were set to take with them various objects: a ukulele, hops intended to boost space, beer, and several digital assets known as non-fungible tokens that will be auctioned off for the cause. Throughout the flight, biological data, including heart rate and sleep, as well as their cognitive capabilities or capacities, will be analyzed to study the health impacts of space. Beyond the mission's charitable and scientific aspects, its stated goal is to prove that the cosmos is accessible to people who have not been handpicked and trained for years as astronauts.
The flight 9 is supersonic.
Meanwhile, Papua New Guinea just celebrated a colorful 46th year of Independence Day. Take a look.
Today is Papua New Guinea's 46th Independence Day celebration. I am a Filipino born and raised here in this country. I am a witness on how they prepare and devote their time, efforts, and talents in celebrating this fabulous event. Independence Day celebration occurs every September 16 each year. Papua New Guineans are patriotic, and there is no better time to showcase this patriotism than on this prosperous day of being separated and free from Australia. Though this year's celebration is in low-key and a lot different from the past years due to the limitations brought about by this coronavirus pandemic, the people of Papua New Guinea managed to celebrate this event as an opportune time to reflect on one's contribution to their country regarding nation building. National Capital District Commission Governor Honorable Poes Parkop spoke before the thousands of citizens riding on their decorative floats at the Independence Boulevard during the Remembrance Walk in honor of the founding father of Papua New Guinea, Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare.
1975 is a time when we came together, one people, one country, one nation. Start our celebration here with all the floats. I want to call on all of us to pay respect and remember Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare. But importantly, remember the values and the principles that he stood for. If we don't have the values and the principles and the right vision as to how to use these resources, money, and what God has blessed us with, we will still fail. The legacy of Grand Chief is bringing us freedom and uniting our people and bringing these 1,000 tribes to live in peace and live in harmony, and to use that as a foundation, as a basis, as a building block to build this nation, and brought us up to now 46 years.
Governor Parkop reiterated that values, principles, and right vision on how to use Papua New Guinea's natural resources will create a better future for the country. He even added that without good ideas and good foundation will mean failure of this land. This public holiday also gave an exciting cultural shows and traditional dances where gatherings of tribes or villages dance to their distinct culture and music called sing-sing. They show and share traditions as each island have their own ways and steps of swaying. Independence Day celebration is also a remarkable experience for our Filipino kababayans, as they enjoy having photo opportunities to these dolled-up citizens who are wearing traditional costumes with their faces painted. They also showed sense of belongingness by putting on Papua New Guinean headdress, ornaments, accessories, and by wearing Papua New Guinea shirts, merry blouses, and highlighting Papua New Guinea colors black, red, and gold. Celebrating Papua New Guinea's 46th Independence Day was an awe-inspiring sight to behold. They found moments of joy and oneness amid struggles and global health crisis. As their national pledge goes, Papua New Guinea will remain one people, one nation, one country. Happy 46th Independence Day, Papua New Guinea. Reporting from Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, this is Echo Hortaleza Quinola, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
And finally tonight, let's go on a trip, a food trip at the 626 Night Market in Arcadia, California. Let's tag along with Eva and Alan Basalyahi as they join hundreds of spectators at this year's Comebacks event. Take a look.
Skipping a year due to the pandemic, the 626 Night Market once more lights up the city of Arcadia, California.
There's plenty of games, live entertainment, and of course, a vista of food and sweet treats to happily get lost in.
We have this traditional Japanese sushi combo, but we have a pocky crispy shell. That's very easier to eat because we use a wonton, deep fried wonton shell, and we put pocky on it. Yeah, we use freshest fish, right? They like sushi. I'm surprised many people like sushi.
We're selling all natural fruit drinks. We are one of the only booths that use natural fruits in the drinks. And inside each bottle, we provide scooped fruit, scooped cantaloupe, melon, and watermelon. Each bottle comes with their own fruits and your choice of drink. The little kids that do see the bottles, they see it just as like a little, it kind of reminds them of when they were younger. Some people, the younger kids get excited to see a special kind of bottle, not just a cup. The older people, some people are kind of skeptical about getting a bottle, but at the end of the day, everyone just gets the fresh drinks, they love it, and then they come back for more.
If you translate it from Japanese, yakitori is chicken skewers, and yado means house, so chicken skewer house.
We only sell chicken skewers with two flavor. It's either spicy or original. So those chicken skewers have mochi at the end, which is our specialty, which is our catchphrase. Like whatever everybody's doing, we are the unique booth that has that mochi bite at the end of the skewers.
I definitely recommend our booth, Yakitori Yado. It's chicken skewers with mochi at the end. You can't get it anywhere else, only here. And right now, mochi is trending. We're seeing a lot of like mochi ice cream, donut with mochi, even like a waffle and a mochi inside. So we're definitely, I feel like we're in trending right now as well.
Steamed Buns' angle is to present food based off of pop culture such as Pikachu, Keroppi, or miscellaneous.
It's a steam bun, so they all got different meat fillings on the inside. Got barbecue pork, ground pork, teriyaki chicken, tofu, and they're all dressed up like different characters, kind of like our new niche that we've been doing.
We vary the characters on pop culture, so different things from popular cartoons like Sanrio, anime, kind of just what's trending in pop culture. Some of them are really too cute to eat, but they are delicious.
We've done a lot of festivals all throughout the country, of course, and honestly, none of them really match up to quite
None
like
of them
this.
compare to quite like this. This is the best.
It's a different vibe. It's cool.
Despite the cap on attendance, the 626 night market still saw crowds of people hungry for food and fun.
We're at 75% capacity, and actually a little less than 75, I believe. Even with those capacity numbers set, we've been selling out and stuff like that. So it's very exciting to see that. And like we always try to be safe here, you know, with the masks, and like social distancing is a little tougher, you know, for us because we have like a smaller venue, but we do try our best. We have like a big diversity of like the food vendors that we accept, and we work really hard to try to curate those for our attendees. So it's the only place I think that you can get like beignets, but also like fried squid and like soft shell crab, and it's a huge melting pot of just like different foods. We have a ton of fair games, right? And even scattered throughout the venue, we have different like little activations. We have a sax quartet where they play like Disney songs and like anime songs and just very lively music around the venue. We have a main stage. We try our best to like get our attendees engaged in other ways besides the food as well. So they know that they have other things to do besides, you know, wait in line for food and stand around and eat. And I think that's very cool to have for our attendees.
Midnight marked the end of the 626 season, as well as heralding the rush of customers eager to fill up one last time before pop-up storefronts disappeared.
If you can brave the heat, then coming to the 626 night market right when it opens saves you from having to park too far away and affords you the opportunity to score the food, desserts, and drinks you crave, minus the long lines.
The cooler temps and the distinct nighttime vibe have their own appeal, so you can't go wrong no matter what time you choose. In Arcadia, California, Eva and Allen, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thanks to you too. Alma, we really should not be doing food stories at this time. Now, where to get Japanese food at this time? Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you are not hungry at this time. I'm CJ Hero. The news continues tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.